Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode number 66 of the Fitness Devil podcast. We have Dani Shugart of T Nation. She's an editor and a writer, and she's on our podcast today. We go through a whole bunch of stuff, most notably her current work on raising awareness about breast implant illness, her thoughts on that. We discuss eating disorders and how the industry has made progress on that conversation. She wrote an article, Give up labels, get results, and dealing with recent obsession with assigning yourself a label and how that can actually be detrimental. Exercise and mental health and the long-term brain benefits of exercise. So that's something that's sort of starting to emerge. We're understanding a bit better. It's important to understand that it's really good for you. So you should consider more exercise that way. Also, we look at the use of rules in fitness, where this can be really beneficial and where it can actually get you into trouble, to use caution, and the spotlight effect and how we experience the spotlight effect. We basically think that people can read our minds and how fears surrounding that can actually keep us out of the gym. So how to defeat that. Guys, stick around. It's a really wonderful episode, and hopefully you'll give us a 5-star review, share it on your social media.
Shut up and sit down.
Hey everyone, welcome to our newest episode of the Fitness Devil podcast. And I'll jump right to it. I feel like I have actually said this a lot lately on the podcast. Today we have a great guest whose work I've been reading for a decade on T Nation. So a lot of T Nation writers and contributors lately. We've had Lee Boyce recently, Charles Staley, Dean Somerset is a fixture on our podcast. We always try to sneak his name in at some point, sort of a running joke. Eric Bach, Brett Contreras, Nick Tuminello is scheduled to be recorded next week, and there's a whole bunch more than that. But today it's a real pleasure to actually have on here longtime writer and editor Dani Shugart on the podcast. And as I said, Dani's a writer, editor for TNation.com, a lifetime natural lifter, digital marketer for Spike Energy. Dani's a real pleasure.
Thanks so much. You cut out just a little bit there.
I was going to say, you did cut out. Perfect. We got it out of the way.
Yeah. Well, hopefully my connection's okay, guys. So just like I said,
good.
me.
We're good.
Chops up. Good. All right. So let's actually go right into this. And so, Dani, you mentioned, I would say, like totally out of the warpath about this one lately on your social media and your articles. And it's about breast implant illness. So Can you actually explain what it is? Why this has become a crusade for you, and let's actually talk about why breast implants have been such a ubiquitous thing within the fitness industry culture.
Sure. So what it is I think breast implant illness is a little bit of a misnomer because it's more of a reaction. Like if your body reacts negatively to anything foreign inside that's been placed inside of it, then you're going to see that reaction manifest in a bunch of different ways. One of the ways that breast implants impact certain females, I'm not saying all females, certain females, is it lowers their immunity. So if you lower your immunity, you're going to be susceptible to all sorts of illnesses and ailments, including autoimmune problems. So your body's going to start attacking itself, and you're going to feel, you could get a ton of different, Hashimoto's, you could get Sjogren's disease, you could get fibromyalgia. There's a ton of different ways that breast implant illness can manifest, but it's mostly a reaction, not an illness. So that's what it was. So you were asking what it was, and then your second part was why I'm kind of on a warpath. Yeah.
Why it matters.
So I there's no way that I would ever say to someone, you shouldn't do to your body whatever you want to do. I don't care what you want to do with your body. Do whatever you want. But I just want the industry, the plastic surgery industry, to be honest with us about what all of the risks are. Because when I went in to get my breast implants, that was swept under the rug. nobody told me you're going to be more at risk for all these other symptoms, all these other problems. It's going to ruin your fitness. It's going to make you hurt. It's going to put you in agonizing pain. You're going to consider suicide later on down the road. You're going to be fucked up. Yeah. So nobody told me this. Nobody told me this. And it's so frustrating because I just want the knowledge out there to spread. I don't want to ban implants, and I don't want to tell women what they should or shouldn't do with their bodies, but I do want them to be aware, just like cigarette smokers, right? They know the risks. They know all of the risks. That's never swept under the rug. The risks are right there on the package. So when they smoke cigarettes, they do so with full knowledge that they could get lung cancer, they could get throat cancer, they could get any other problem, and they know it. Like, they're making an informed decision. But when I was considering implants, it wasn't like a flippant decision. I had researched. I was looking for reasons not to do it. Since those reasons didn't come up, all of the problems were rare and preventable. So I chose to get them, thinking that I was making the right decision.
Do you think that they don't, because I wouldn't even have thought of like Hashimoto's or like systemic stress causing all that stuff. Do you think that they don't even know at that point? Because like I've never heard of that, but like that makes sense. Like that's logical when you break it down.
There's a history. That's a great question, because there is a history of silicone causing these problems, and it's been happening since the 60s. Yeah. I'm reading a book right now about all of the memos that came to light accidentally, and it's inner office memos that talked about like all the shit that the silicone caused in women. Yeah. And how it would seep out of the implant shell. And so these problems have been going on for decades, and doctors, even like doctors who aren't plastic surgeons, still think that they're, science is advanced. You don't have to worry about those problems anymore. Yeah. So
that's just crazy. Like I'm not going to get breast implants, but like going in there thinking like it's like a thing that'll uplift you literally. But that you'll come out with Hashimoto's at the end of it. Cause like, again, I wouldn't even have thought of autoimmune, and that like almost blows my mind, because that can get swept under the rug. Like they're even thinking depression's autoimmune at this point. So it's like you sign up for that and you end up with that like years later. Like that's nuts.
It is. And to answer your question, Andrew, earlier about like why it's so prevalent in the fitness industry, I don't think it's prevalent in all of fitness. I mean, when I went to a CrossFit gym, I was the only girl with implants. And they were all asking me like, what, when did you decide to do this? What, they were asking me about it. And I was like, here's the facts. But when I went to more of I generally go to a regular gym where people train mostly bodybuilding style. And so in a bodybuilding style gym, like it's rare to see a woman without implants, right? So the reason why I think it's prevalent is there are two reasons for it, actually. I think that women who get themselves in shape, a lot of times they end up losing a lot of body fat, right? So one of the locations where they lose body fat is their chests. And so then they just end up having smaller chests, and sometimes they have sagging that comes with that. So they want to make themselves feel better by, getting implants. And I see nothing wrong with that. The other reason it's prevalent is because I think a lot of women want to mimic or follow in the footsteps of other fitness pros who have those, voluptuous curves while also being really, really lean. Does that make sense?
Absolutely does.
Yeah. I mean, why do you think it's prevalent? I mean, is that?
If I don't know Andrew's viewpoints, I would have just assumed, again, not knowing anything, like I'm coming in blind almost, would be like the aesthetics and like the popularity that comes with, I guess, thinking that you need to look a certain way to get, right. I don't want to say fame, but like to kind of progress further in the aesthetics portion. Like that's what I would assume baseline, but I have no idea.
Well, I remember looking up to certain females in the fitness industry and thinking, I want to be like her. I mean, she's got the perfect body. I've worked my tail off. I got really, really lean. And then I was like, okay, the last step, this is the last thing that is missing on me is I just need a bigger chest, and so that was my line of thinking back then. Of course, I'm not in that I'm not in that headspace anymore. I don't think like that anymore, but I think that's what I was thinking about 6 years ago.
Yeah, I just to sort of answer your question you posed to me and why I think it's so popular. I mean, number one, I think within the actual competitive fitness industry for bikini competitions,
Yeah.
it seems like it's almost required because of the aesthetic for judging. So I think there's partly that. And I think now we also have a culture with the explosion of Instagram, visual attractiveness, generating a following. And I think that, some women feel pressure to go in that direction.
Right.
And I think it's a lot of people's eyes, it's
Any kind of
no.
posting and become more common.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You froze and I couldn't hear you on a really important part.
All right, I'll try to grab that again. I think it is my connection, listeners, guys. I'm really sorry if it's on my end. I'll restate that whole thing. I think it's just become so common now with Instagram and the whole visual aspect of it and the popularity and gaining a following that I think it's so common that now there's more pressure to be there and have, I guess, that look. And if you don't, I think there's some women, especially who are trying to gain a big following on Instagram, that they feel like they're not living up to the ideal of that, I suppose. I'm not sure I'm being particularly articulate.
And we hammer on like Instagram models, like, and the stupidity of Instagram, but it's almost like there's almost like this need to be visually, I guess, appealing to get the followers to then do something where, like, instead of prioritizing like your brain or like what you know and what you have to say, that gets prioritized and it's almost backwards. So people listen to you because you have a big Instagram following as opposed to the other way around. And that's a lot of pressure if you're trying to build a career in the fitness industry and that's what you think you need to do. Like, I don't know. That's how I see it, but I mean, I have no fucking clue.
It really is. And I don't want to blame women for that line of thinking because it's really hard to not fall into that. I mean,
it works.
Especially competitors, because I remember when I was competing, I was always taking pictures of my butt. And it was like, looking back on that, I was like, I am part of the problem, and I take responsibility for that because I feel like competing kind of turns you, even if you're a person who's not a narcissist or not, wanting to show your TNA all over social media, it kind of like getting ready for the competition kind of turns you into that. And I saw that with myself too. If I were to ever compete again, I would want to be the opposite. I would want to be like, okay, this is who I am. I have no tits and I'm going to get up there on stage and I'm going to rock it, but I'm also going to be classy everywhere else on social media, etc.
Well, I can kind of relate. When I was powerlifting differently, but when I was dieting down for powerlifting, you almost get this window where you like look really good. So like you almost take as many pictures as you can. It's almost like it's like a fleeting moment in time, and then like that's when all the pictures come in. And so like you're like that competition mode turns you into that because it's not long lasting. So I've done it. To a lesser extent, but no ass pics.
Mr. who lifts with his shirt off in most of his
videos. But that's because it's fucking hot. Like that's what I mean. That's normal. That's like this is what I am. It's not a selfie of like my shirt. Like my shirt's off because it's fucking hot. That's different, man.
And I have nothing against people who like show their gains. Like if you're proud of your work, then heck yeah, show that off. But like I know that I was kind of I think I went through a slutty phase. I'll be honest about that. I think I went through a slutty phase and I just, and I feel free to call me out if you guys see me doing that shit again. And, that's fine. I would be open to hearing criticism like that.
I think it's intent though. And I think everyone can read through bullshit too. And I think that's where Instagram may have a turnaround at some point because I think people are able to kind of see the bullshit a little bit more because intent's like you can show yourself in those pictures and have the intent of like being proud of yourself, and then there's I'll just use it because you said it. There's like the slutty intent, or like with you know what I mean? Like there is different intentions, and I think if you look at it from that aspect, I guess they can have like the same picture can have different meanings depending on the person and their intent, and I think that the intention is usually the other way around, more slutty to get followers, but maybe I'm wrong. Anyone who said I use slutty, she used it first.
Well, yeah, I think you're right. There is, you can see the intention, and a lot of times you'll see the caption will tell you a lot more about that too. I'm tired of pretentiousness.
Yeah.
I'm tired of people pretending to be something that they're not, or pretending to. I don't know.
That's Instagram in general, though. Like, I mean, if you're sick of it, imagine, like, there's people who don't understand that people aren't fake. Like, I think that's the problem that I see with even all that shit, is that if you're presenting a picture of your life and a caption of your life, it sucks if it's not you. Because when you find out later down the road that you influenced all these people, they're buying into something that's not real. And I think that happens way too often. I just don't like that aspect of it. If that's you and you want to post slutty pictures and, like, that is you.
Actually sick of it, right? Like, how many people are actually sick of playing the game?
Yeah.
But they feel like, well, they can't get caught left behind. So it does make you wonder a little bit.
But you also have to, if you're that type of person, you also have to wonder, okay, well, what kind of followers am I actually gathering? Like, are these quality people, or are they just jerking off to my pictures? You know what I mean? And if you're trying to gather that kind of crowd, you're pathetic. I mean, you need to get laid by someone who's not on the internet. You need to go and have actual relationships with human beings outside of your computer. You know what I mean?
This is what I love when we get our guests to say things that are so honest and visceral like that, to get really.
It's better when you say it, because then I can say it.
That's always the best of the best on this podcast. So, no, I love that. I love that level of honesty.
I think social media is a problem in general, because it means, the better you are at social media, the worse you probably are at life. Like, you need to unplug for once and go have life, go do life, go be an awesome, sister or daughter or father, or whatever you need to do. But the more time you spend on social media, the less time you're doing that stuff. And I'm speaking to myself too. Like, I'm telling that to myself too, because I think we're all a little, there are times when anyone can get trapped in that.
My favorite people to follow are the people that have shitty Instagrams that are popular. So, like, Ben Bruno, for example, he clearly doesn't try, but then, like, he has his stories and they're super funny, but, like, they're not like images that he had a professional photographer take, and he's, like, looking into the sunset. It's literally the shittiest Instagram ever. Like, that's what I want to see, because I'm so sick of
the best. It's unstaged. It's natural. It's just his life. It's his life.
Yeah. Brett Contreras is a good example too. Like, it's just the shittiest stories ever. He's just, like, literally tapping ad story and, like, taking videos of his, like, those. That's what I like, because that's popularity based on, like, they're literally just documenting their life. They're not necessarily contriving it based on some image they think they need to do. And I think more people should do that. But again, what do I know? I guess that doesn't pay the bills, but it's gonna.
Neither of them feels curated.
Well, there's gonna be. I keep saying there's gonna be a reckoning. People are gonna fucking figure out that this, like, fake shit is not gonna be what they want, and then all these people are gonna be fucked, because they're gonna have a bunch of, like you said, dudes jerking off to their pictures. Then what? Like, they can't buy shit from you.
You have to confess though, because, like, when I bake cookies, like, I want that picture to look. I want you to, like, want to shove that in your mouth so hard and fast, and just, like, I want my cookies to look amazing. So I will stage that photo. I will make it look, I will put on a little filter to make, the colors more vibrant or whatever. But I want my food to look fucking awesome. And I also, I also make my dogs look really good. I also stage them, because I want people to see that my dogs are awesome. And sometimes photos don't do reality justice. Like, you can't tell how adorable my dogs are because of a picture. So I will enhance that picture sometimes to like bring out the colors, or whatever.
But that's different though. Like, that's maybe that's like where I should make a rule book, because I'm the authority on it. But if you're gonna take a picture of your dog, it's gonna be something that uplifts you. So if you're taking a picture of your dog, and, like, that's something that adds to your cup, as opposed to, like, you fucking taking your soul piece by piece out of your body to, like, get a picture, like, that's not a dog picture or a cookie picture. That's, like, That's like the fake, I don't even like sunsets and the ocean, and I'm gonna stage my picture and get there and talk this fake story. That has to eat your soul. Like, there's no way it can't. I don't know. Maybe I should ask them. Like, is that?
What if you're stealing part of your dog's soul by doing that?
But that's
like, have you ever thought about your dog?
I totally.
If their tail's wagging, they're good. That's my rule. Like, I should write a rule book, Andrew. If you're posting your dog and their tails aren't wagging, like, then they're not happy. Then you are taking a little bit of their soul. For sure.
I'm guilty.
I've got a few friends, and like a lot of my friends on social media will post pictures of their pets, and actually I think that's amazing. But we all have that one or two friends who, it's usually guys. It'll be guys, and they'll have the photo with the dog, and it's usually a bully breed, and you can totally tell. It's like, dude is in bed shirtless with the dog, and you know it's just like a major thirst trap
like
photo.
Who took that picture?
Yeah.
What?
Women do the same thing, but with their ass. Oh, here's my dog, and also my ass.
Anthony's gonna hate me, but like my business partner, he has a picture of himself on his stairs with a bully dog. That was his dad's. It's not even his. You're right. That's the classic picture. That's the guy's version of slutty. Picture with pit bulls and no shirt in your bed. Oh, sorry. Let's move on.
I think it's important to touch on, but let's actually go into something else. And there's actually an article you wrote. I really liked it. It said it was called "Give Up Labels, Get Results," and it's dealing with the recent obsession with assigning oneself to a workout or a dietary ideology. We're seeing tons of this. CrossFit, intermittent fasting are a couple of good examples. It's tribalism. We've talked about in this podcast before. How do you see assigning labels? How do you see that interfering with getting the best end outcome for people?
Great question. So I think that a lot of times when we call ourselves one thing, it's really hard for us to admit when that one thing kind of stops working for us. So if we are super dedicated to a specific type of diet, and we like to call ourselves that, then once that diet stops working, we're going to be so blinded by that we're going to be like, well, I'm just not dieting hard enough, so I must stick with this and continue calling myself this and just do it harder, instead of like switching gears, trying something else, and sampling all the diets, trying things out, giving them a fair chance, committing to multiple things at different times to see what works best for you, adapting them, and figuring out how you as an individual function best and what diets work for you, and what workout routine works for you at this moment, and that's going to change. Like, you should never be so dedicated to one diet or one type of fitness for your life that you're never like open to other ideas or other variations on what you're doing.
Well, and it's funny. Like we see this happening so much, and we talk about. I think I've talked about tribes way too much, but like tribes are like is almost like the new thing is to be part of a tribe. And now that people understand what a tribe is, now we're getting the battles of tribes are good, tribes are bad. But before all this, no one even knew what the fuck a tribe was. They were just following shit. So it's just interesting that this conversation has actually developed to understanding what a tribe is, and people not wanting to be part of them and be part of them because they are healthy. Like, that is evolutionarily like what we're supposed to try and do.
Like communities.
Yeah.
And I totally agree. Like, community is super important.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's important to be a part of something. But then I think where it goes wrong is to say, I'm part of this group, but I will not be a part of anything else. So I feel like I have a great community at my gym right now, but I would never be like, I'm a part of this community, so that means that I cannot associate with anybody else outside of this gym. That's just silly. I mean, it's so juvenile. It's what we did in junior high or high school, and it's silly because it's like, well, but you could be missing out of the benefits on that tribe and that tribe and that tribe and that tribe. So I just don't like. I like to be able to do things without calling myself that thing doer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like to call it the anti-tribe. I think I'm going to coin that. But it's almost like your tribe is the people who are open-minded enough to hear everyone else's tribe and just pick what works best for you. Like that's the tribe I want to be part of. But it's not as niche, so I don't know if it'll catch on.
I don't think it will, because the people who create the tribes want you to be tribalistic in your thought process. They want the people who are doing keto want you to be all in on keto, and they want you to be militant towards any other type of diet. So I just think that that's dangerous, because like there's value in a lot of different things, and that value will kick in as you need it at different times of your life.
Do you think, like, this is actually because you've been exposed to a lot of this stuff just with T Nation. Do you think that like the people at the top, like the marketers and stuff, they understand how tribalism works, and they're trying to like manipulate the variables to get people to buy into shit? Like, is that a thing? Do you think?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that like Kylie Jenner wants all of her, fans to buy her lipstick and be Kylie Jenner makeup wearers or whatever,
I had this discussion. So this is another Anthony thing. Like, why do all these girls have fake lips? And like my description was because Kylie Jenner like literally did it, and she's so big that she developed I had this conversation. She developed a tribe of people who like inject their lips, and now like there's so many women on Instagram with like the fake lips, like big, like not even like bad, a good fake, but like way too much fake. And,
it's almost cartoonish. You know what I mean?
It's insane. And just another side note, since we're on tribes, I recently found out that tribe is actually not derogatory, but it's actually like insensitive to Native Americans or Aboriginals.
The term.
So now they're getting mad that people are using tribe to describe like they're part of keto, because it actually is offensive. So just a side note, not that anyone cares.
Okay, so it's like a cultural appropriation of.
Yeah, it's because like they're supposed to be a band, not a tribe. So tribe was like a way to like make them feel like shit back in the day, I guess. So just know, I don't think it's actually going to catch on, but like someone's insensitive to that.
That's political correct. Run amok, and anyone who's getting with that kind of bullshit needs to fuck.
I knew that'd get Andrew going, but like it was literally an article. I swear to fuck God.
It's good for society. It's like this. I won't get into politics like you said, but like just some of this idea crap. Some astronaut went and quoted Winston Churchill, and fucktard went and people attacked him for quoting Winston Churchill because allegedly Winston Churchill had some thoughts that didn't fit the social narrative of today, and then he apologized for this.
What?
Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, the world would be a terrible place if not for the actions of Winston Churchill. So, people need to really just get off of that craziness.
That's awesome. Anyway, sorry.
But
any other story? Does Dani have a story of something that's fucked up?
What's that?
I said, do you have a story of political incorrectness that shouldn't be politically incorrect?
Oh, actually, not that I can think of. Well, oh my gosh. I mean,
there's probably a lot.
I feel like there are too many that we see, and I'm, just to be a positive, happy person in life, I try to kind of blind myself to that stuff. I'm like, okay, everything eventually is going to be offensive. Yeah. So you can either pay attention to all that, or you can just be like, fuck it, I'm going to be offensive. If you're offended by what I say and do, then I'm going to be offended. So go for it.
I think that's.
Like, at a certain point, you start trying to be offensive because you're just so tired of everyone's feelings getting hurt. So you're like, okay, if you think that I'm offensive, see what you think of this.
Yeah, I agree. I think that like that's kind of like the way we try to go about this podcast is like, I'm sure we've offended some people, but like we're literally the least offensive people. If I'm saying something offensive, like you'll know because I won't laugh at the end. But I get the whole thing. But like sometimes it's like South Park. South Park's so blatantly offensive, like you can't be offended. Like I went to I was in New York a couple of weeks ago, and I went to the Book of Mormon. Like people aren't flying off the handle about the Book of Mormon, and they literally made fun of every single political, religious, sexual orientation group and melded them all together, and no one's making fun of. Like I just don't get where. Anyways, sorry, bad rant.
Well, but the thing about South Park is that they are equally offensive to everyone. So that's what makes it.
So yes, that's this podcast. We're equally offensive to everyone, so you can't get mad at us. That's great. I like that. That's
something that you mentioned about do marketers understand the concept of tribes and whatnot? Absolutely. There's a writer I like, Seth Godin, who writes a lot of marketing stuff. He's got a book called Tribes. He actually goes into it in detail. Rand Holiday's Perennial Seller, in a lot of ways, talks about the tribalism behind the people who support certain types of artists. He talks a lot about Iron Maiden and their fans and that sort of thing. But that was probably worth noting. Let's actually move on to our next question.
Well, no, the book is going to be taken off the rack soon because it's offensive. Andrew, God.
No.
Okay, let's get back to exercise. So I feel like I do feel like people now clearly understand that the physical benefits of exercise. Like we'll say that exercise is good. Would you address the benefits to our mental health? Because we don't usually talk about that, and especially the long-term, we'll call it brain effects of exercise.
Absolutely. So, you could look up, you could go to Google search and find like a number of studies that talk about how exercise prevents neurodegenerative diseases and how it protects the brain and how it prevents depression and all these other things. But you don't really need to see a study to know that you feel happier, you feel sharper, you feel more intelligent after you're done exercising or when you've been exercising consistently. It's easier to stay on your game with all things, outside of the gym when you are consistently exercising. And I can give you a really, really good example of this. So I have a friend he's in his, I want to say mid to late 70s. And he's kind of my walking buddy. Like if I go to the gym and have a walking day, then sometimes he'll be he's my buddy who I talk to on the treadmill. And he is sharp as a tack. He's a veteran. He's just like, he used to be an alcoholic. He used to be overweight, but now he's lean and he's sharp and he's hilarious. He's fucking hilarious. And he got himself better by just committing to exercise, and he'll walk on the treadmill for 1 hour with the incline cranked way up. And I cannot even keep up. Like if I tried to put my incline where his is at and keep up with him and go for a fucking hour, I could not do it. And he's not even out of breath. I mean, he's telling me jokes and we're talking the whole time. And this man is just like, how are you in your 70s? And he's happy. And he's like, and that's, so I just want to be like Ted when I'm in my 70s. I want to be that awesome. And I think that exercise is the key to getting there.
Well, they were like, we talked about with Staley, but like how strength training is like the biggest benefit of it as you become older is like to get up off the ground, like evolutionarily, like if you fall at that age, you're probably dead. So like just being physically active is kind of that way to tell your body, like I'm still able to do shit that I need to do to live.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
I don't know. Like that's how I look at it. I know that's super fucked up, but like, yeah, like walking is like, that's that whole thing where it's cliche in the sense that people always recommend, you need to get your 8,000 steps a day to like lose weight, blah, 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 blah. But it's more just, you need to tell your body to do stuff it's meant to do. And exercise tends to check off a lot of the boxes most of the time.
Well, and he's not even done after walking. After walking, He gets off the treadmill and then he goes and lifts weights.
Maybe it was Charles Staley. Does he go lift weights after too? Like, is he strong? Like, does he go deadlift like 300 pounds? That'd be nuts.
Oh, Ted?
Yeah.
No, I mean he tinkers around with machines and stuff, but I mean still, it's impressive.
I think that's where like we can even look at the fitness industry in total, and like we've come almost have this skewed image of what fitness needs to be, and like at the end of the day, like that dude's 70 and in shape, like he's kind of living the dream there, and he didn't have to go do all this fucked up shit to his body.
Yeah.
I don't know. Andrew, what's the next one here?
I guess I'm a little quiet. I'm just like Dean is going off today.
Sorry, I'm trying not to. I'm gonna be good today. Actually, Dani's had more rants than me and you combined today, so this is perfect.
Well, I'm good with that. I think maybe I'm just used to like each podcast is different, and I mean we usually have a lot of banter back and forth. Never mind. I was going to say something about one podcast. I'm not even going there. But on our last podcast, Brett Brett will just talk and like there's just no getting any words in, but actually it was kind of perfect. We just let him go. So I mean, I don't think we really said
It was
much on that
perfect because it was one of those mornings where like not that I didn't want to do the podcast, but there's just a lot going on. I think I was leaving the next day to travel, and he like literally talked the whole time, and it was perfect. 'Cause I just got to listen to Brett and his brain and his conversation he had with himself, and it was like the smartest conversation ever between one person. It was, like he was like answering and asking himself questions and like going off on research. It was like literally the best.
And he was excited. He was like a little kid. And, Dani, I'm pretty sure you probably know Brett fairly well and just how excited he gets when he gets talking about the things he's passionate about. So, and yeah, everybody listening here, like that was literally our podcast episode from last week. So you can go check that one out if you're interested. So the next thing I was going to ask you about is you've touched on the use of rules in fitness and nutrition on your social media. And I guess I was going to ask, how can setting rules help people and where can they go dangerously wrong?
Well, I'm not against rules. I'm not anti-rule or anything like that. But I do think that a lot of rules that people set in the fitness industry, or a lot of guidelines people give, are they're kind of arbitrary, right? I mean, it could be something that you found that works for yourself, and then you're like telling other people, well, this is a rule that everyone should have. Well, that's understandable, but like some people thrive with different boundaries, you know what I mean? And they don't need to have other people set rules for them, or maybe they can try out those rules. I mean, like, was it Arnold Schwarzenegger who said, learn the rules so that you can break them intelligently?
I think
actually
was him.
Arnold, probably someone way more famous than that, like historically. Learn the rules so that you can break them intelligently.
Yeah.
So I agree with trying out different things that people recommend, whether they're guidelines, they're rules, whatever. Try them out, but then learn them and then break them to benefit yourself. Like figure out how you will succeed within the rules, and then figure out how you will succeed when you bend them or when you use them to your advantage, right?
Well, I think a lot of people even lose the context of what the rules are trying to, like, they don't even know what their context is, and then they use rules for something else. Like, we'll use Ted, for example. Ted's just trying to stay in shape. Arnold's rules probably wouldn't work for him. You know what I mean? I think that there's just so many rules out there and so many people saying that this is the way to do things, where it's just hard to evaluate, I guess, the context in which they're saying it, because fitness has grown to be like a lot of things at this point.
With rules, there's a couple thoughts I have here. One is a lot of the people who are marketing ideologies around nutrition and training, in order to create the brand that they're creating and a product to sell, they have to create rules. I think that a lot of these dietary regimes, paleo has its rules, intermittent fasting has its rules, keto has its rules, the snake diet has its rules.
This is the first time you said it.
Yeah.
So Dani doesn't know. Dani, do you know about the snake diet?
No, I don't.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, we're not going to go too far there, but just you need to Google it after the episode, and you're going to just see crazy shit. So
he's local.
This is really, really off the rocker stuff. These people are creating rules for people to follow, and that goes into creating a tribe, and they have their tribe, and they're selling something. And I think if you can recognize that that's really a lot of what this stuff is, it's creating rules to package up something to market to you, then you can be a little more wary of it. Now, the second thought, and it's sort of, Dani, I think this kind of goes to something you were saying as well. Some people, rules are going to work very well. Some people won't do well with rules. A lot of it actually has to do with your personality type. So if you're familiar with, I forget how to explain this, but there are 5 sort of dimensions to personality. Whether someone is high or low in openness, high or low in conscientiousness, high or low in neuroticism, agreeableness.
Like you knew all of them.
But so people who are really high in conscientiousness tend to be very detail oriented. And then people who are low in openness tend to be more rigid in habits and routines and stuff like that. So if you had someone who maybe skewed a little high in conscientiousness and or tended to be low on openness, then creating some rules for them to follow might actually be the way to approach their programming. It might work better for them. If you have someone who's really, really high in an openness sort of personality, someone who likes to travel and experience new things, well, creating a lot of boxes for them to have to live within probably isn't going to work for them very well. So if you kind of get a handle on yourself as a person and what your personality is, you'll probably realize if creating some structure and some rules can work. Brian Cron is really good at, and again, another one of Tea Nation writers we've had on a couple times. He's really good at understanding old school rule structure and sometimes breaking away from the purely scientific to do what's actually best for the client. He's kind of legendary for this stuff. I've seen him present on this, and I remember someone else in the audience I was sitting nearby. They were
like, fuck you, Brian.
What's that?
So they're probably like, fuck you, Brian. You're an idiot.
Well, no, not that at all. They were just crying a little bit about the fact that Brian was talking about, sometimes it's okay to use rules like telling someone, all right, don't eat after 9 p.m. because we're so fixated on the idea of breaking this notion that, eating after 9 p.m. is perfectly fine. It doesn't make you fat. But guess what? We talked about this recently, too. If you have someone who the only food that they go for is complete and utter garbage after 9 p.m., then yes, eating late is bad for them. And maybe they actually have to have a window where they say, no, I don't eat after that time. As long as you understand why and you just don't reinforce the pseudoscientific bullshit. So I think rules can be perfectly fine as long as they're not completely out of control. And I think for some people, they just don't work at all. So it's just finding what person.
I like the idea of structure. Mm-hmm. Like whenever you have a diet, it forces people into structure. And if it's usually people who are outside of fitness who aren't used to that, aren't used to eating a certain way. They have no structure to how they eat. And so they need those rules. They need to have some type of structure to their day so that they can figure out, okay, well, maybe eating M&Ms throughout the entire fucking day is not super helpful to my physique. But I agree. There's a time and place for rules. But I think the reason why sometimes it makes people bristle is because it's people like the idea of guidelines instead. So I'm going to follow these guidelines, and if I screw up, then it's not like I broke a rule. You know what I mean? It sounds less harsh. And so I think it's kind of about semantics sometimes. And that's why, personally, I try to use guidelines, the term guidelines instead of rules, because I don't want people to feel bad about themselves. Although I love thinking of myself as a rule breaker sometimes, like I don't see why that would be a stigma, but,
well, it's because you're able to look at the rule and break it and feel good about it, as opposed to when you break it, feel bad about it. And that's where guidelines tend to have a language that will make people not feel bad about shit if they do not follow it. So that's just a language thing for you. You're just gonna break it because it feels good.
So about the idea of rules, and this is I don't think that this is necessarily about diet, but it's just about rules in general. I was just reading this book. Awesome book. It's called Barking Up the Wrong Tree. Have you heard of it?
Eric Barker. Yeah.
Yeah.
My friend Mike Howard referred that book to me. And do you actually know who Mike is?
No, huh?
He's a great fitness professional out of Vancouver, a lot of nutrition. I will talk about him later, but he's really, really great follow. Someone would actually be a great writer for Tea Nation. But go on. Awesome book.
So there's this one part of the book where it talks about people who in high school and college followed all the rules, got straight A's, did all this stuff. They tend to not be the most successful outside of school because they're so good at following rules. They're so good at, going by what's supposed to happen, staying within their guidelines, staying within that structure that school has given them, that once they get out of school, they can't be successful on their own because they don't have that structure and they don't know how to think outside of the box anymore. They're so used to being given rules and following them that they can't succeed, be wildly successful outside of those rules. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, makes tons of sense. Most of the really, really successful people that you hear about, let's say Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, these are not people who followed the rules. Now, again, there's lots of people who didn't follow the rules that really ended up having very poor outcomes. You don't always hear about those people. But a lot of the most successful people in business, in comedy, in acting, in music, and what have you, were obviously people who didn't follow a specific formula, and they weren't constrained by the rigid and traditional way of thinking. They were adventurous, entrepreneurial. Sir Richard Branson would be another really good example of that.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think a lot of the mavericks in our fitness industry, people who've been really successful, created new things as opposed to something that was just the norm. I think a lot of the people that we've seen have had a lot of success, have created something out of nothing. And they're the people that are influencing our industry now. Someone like John Berardi, who created and built Precision Nutrition, it would be probably a really good example of that.
For sure, definitely.
Okay, I know I don't know how you guys are with time, but we do want to do this one because like Andrew generally likes to like troll people's like social media and pick out something like viral or something that they said that's fucked up, and then we talk about it. It's great. So on yours, you commented on Twitter and shared an article about the spotlight effect and like how it can keep people outside the gym. Would you explain what the spotlight effect is and how it impacts our fitness? Because I think this is something we haven't talked about yet, and it's kind of cool to hit on this.
Okay, so basically what the spotlight effect is when you think that anywhere you go, all eyes are on you. And so it can create a lot of insecurity when you think that everyone is paying attention to you and they're marking down every flaw and everything you do wrong, and they notice every misstep that you take. That's the spotlight effect. You think that everyone is putting a spotlight on you, and it's obviously, it's totally not true. And so the reason why I think that that's why a lot of people don't go to the gym is because they have this fear that everyone is noticing everything that they do or the way they look or how they're so afraid of how they're perceived that they're afraid of even going there. And I think that's a big problem, because the gym, I mean, even thinking about my father, my own dad, he doesn't like to go to the gym, he says, because it's full of testosterone. Isn't that ironic? I work for testosterone. My own dad won't go to the gym because it's full of testosterone. So but I think that that's kind of maybe his excuse, because I just think that maybe he thinks that other people are thinking things about him, and that's just not. Everyone is focused on themselves. You know what I mean? Everyone has a task to do, and they're worried about themselves getting their own workout in. So
what's your thoughts on like combating this? So like we do have trainers that listen to this, and like even this problem popped up in our Stronger You fitness group. This idea of like everyone's watching, so I don't want to do this exercise because they might be looking, or I'm too weak, or I'm too big, or I'm too thin, whatever. How would you recommend that people deal with these things as they pop up with their clients or with their friends and family? Because it's something that, like, if you have a good answer, you can kind of push them along the way, and I think you might have a better insight on this.
Well, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? If you look silly for a few minutes, but then you get a long-term benefit out of it, then so what? Like, so what if people think you look ridiculous? And I do a ton of exercises that probably look ridiculous to people who aren't used to seeing them. I remember before hip thrusts became popular, tons of people would come up to me and be like, "Does that work your biceps?" And I'm like, I would not be doing this to my body and looking this ridiculous if I could just do some curls with my bicep, if I could just do some 21s. But so it's like, yes, I'm going to make, and back then it was like, yes, I know, I realize that I'm making myself look like a fool, but that's because these people have not caught up on what, works inside of the gym. They just don't know what the cutting edge exercises are right now. So, and I don't blame them. But it's at the same time, I'm not going to pretend to be, less silly. I'm just going to do the silly looking things so that I can get that long-term benefit.
Well, and I really don't think, like, this is, maybe I'm wrong, but like, I don't think anyone gives a shit about anyone at the gym. Like, maybe there's some crowds, but like I'm busy trying to get shit done. Maybe that's just me, but like, are there actually lots of people who go and sit there and judge everyone? Like, that seems like a fucking waste of time.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. When I go to the gym, I know that people say you need to avoid the talkers, but like, I have built a community at my gym, and I will make eye contact and at least say, "Hey, how's it going?" So, the last thing I want to do is point out, where someone's making a mistake, because so fucking what? That's going to be a person who I'm going to go to the gym for so that I can say hi to them the next day. Like, I want my gym to be filled with people who I consider family. So, I don't know. I just try to be super positive around people, even if they're new beginners. I like to talk to people. I like to engage them sometimes. I mean, I'll let them do their workout. I'm not that kind of person, but
well, Andrew might have a pretty good insight because like you've been part of a corporate gym, like a huge chain, which would be a different environment than where you're at right now. Because Andrew's at this place called Evolve, but it's essentially a performance gym with a lot of trainers there and a lot of different kind of groups. What do you kind of notice there, Andrew? Like, is there a difference between like those type of environments?
There totally is. So one of the ways I sell people on the idea of Evolve, well, number one, there's no mirrors in there, which is kind of interesting. But
I hate that.
When I'm bringing people in, the no mirrors and just the environment, place like Evolve Straight, there's sort of three groups of people that we don't get in there. Types of people that working in a commercial gym for a long time who tended to create a lot of the problems. There's always this cluster of creepy old men, dirty old men. We had a group of them at the old gym. They would catcall the girls. One guy grabbed one of the female trainers' hair and tugged on it, and then when she came forward with a complaint, one of his friends, because these guys are real fuckers. I was trying to get rid of these guys for years. These guys are garbage. One of the guys snuck up behind her, put his hands on her ribs from behind and rubbed it up and down, and then was like, "Oh, was that too much?" Just to be predatory and intimidate her because the management buried the complaint and wouldn't get rid of these guys because they've been around for so long. And I was really fighting with these guys. These same guys, funny, you're talking about hip thrusting. I was training a couple clients of mine. They're longtime clients' daughters, and they were like 16 and 18 at the time. And I'm having them do certain exercises. These guys are leering at them. So these sort of assholes, we don't get those guys in our gym anymore. Two, you don't get the large packs of young guys who hang around together and can kind of be intimidating to the soccer moms and everybody else who are kind of loud and boisterous. And then we also don't get a lot of my friends, they're into men's physique, or there's bikini girls or bodybuilders. And actually mostly really, really awesome. But you don't also get packs of those guys either. And unfortunately, just their presence can be a little bit intimidating to, your average.
Do you think that they give a shit?
No, they don't. They don't really give a shit at all.
Like those groups.
No. Well, the creepy old men give a shit, and then the packs of boisterous young guys, they can be kind of a nuisance because they can be looking around and laughing at whatever.
Okay, so it is a problem. Like, so if someone walks in the gym, like
those two particular groups can actually be giant pains in the asses in gyms. Yeah. You have to really holding their respect can really work and calm down their shit. The bodybuilders are fine. They're actually usually really, really good. So there's a tactic that I use. I used to use it at the old gym, and I use it all the time now. And any trainers, you'd be wise to do this. If you get a new member who's a little intimidated by the gym, a little scared, just pause and tell them to look around the gym 360 degrees and pause it individually on every single person that they can see in the gym. And then don't say anything. So you get them to do that. And then when they come back and I ask them, was anybody looking back at you? And I've yet to actually have someone turn around and say, yeah, like there are people looking back at me. And that exercise just makes people realize, wait a second, no one's fucking looking at me or cares what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it works. And it usually calms people right down.
I should use that one because I don't, in my head, like my thing would be like prison rules. Like you walk in, you find the bench or the deadlift, load up as much weight and just like smash it and then walk out. It'd be like the equivalent of like knocking out the toughest motherfucker. Like that would be my advice, which would be bad advice is what you're saying. Sorry, I was just thinking about that.
Well, when you bench 440 in competition, I don't think anyone is looking at you.
To go back to that, like that actually goes back to Instagram. It's that whole idea of you just need to put a highlight reel and then people follow you. Anyways, what I was getting at is that's actually amazing. I like that. I'm gonna steal that one if you don't mind. Because I think I do get that question a lot. Like, I don't want to do this because these people will be looking. And I said the same thing Dani says. Like, you know what? They're really not. But like, that's actually probably works. Because no one actually is looking at them. If you actually look around the gym, I could see that. Like, maybe one person, if that.
Well, and, I feel like it's important to communicate with people so that they don't, so that they're never going to, glare at you and hate on,
Yeah.
When there are women in the gym, and I know that sometimes women are competitive with one another, if I see one who's lifting a significant amount of weight, I'm going to go up to her and I'm going to talk to her. I'm going to be like, that is crazy what you just did. Oh my God. And so that's how I've made so many friends at my gym, is like telling them when they did something awesome and telling them how much I admire that, and like, asking for, hey, can you teach me what you were doing just then, because I could use that. Like I know that you know more than I do on this thing, so teach me how to do that.
Well, and that goes into like, even I was joking about the weight thing, but if you go and work hard and like you're doing something that like you have like a program and like you kind of have a good understanding of what you're doing, people do respect that. So they might be looking, but they might be looking like, damn, that person's like doing shit that looks good, and they'll ask you questions. Like, I think we don't have enough of that.
Sure, right.
If you make effort to take opportunities to actually interact with people, a lot of good things are going to come from that. I don't know if I've ever said this on here. I've said this a number of times on social media. Almost every good thing that's ever happened to me has come from the decision to start working out very, very seriously 16 years ago. Before that, I played a lot of sports and dabbled in the gym. But I think about almost all of my good friends in my life are people I've actually met through the gym environment, if that makes sense. People I spend my time with, my friends who I have all my holidays with, they're friends of mine that I met through the gym. Like, just so much good that's come of it. And if you've got someone who is still on the fence about enlisting this and on the fence about even stepping foot into a gym, it's not just a place you shouldn't feel intimidated by, but it's actually a really great environment to make friends and meet new people and have a really positive social experience if you value that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It goes back to tribes. We're just keep circling around. You found your tribe in the gym, Andrew. That's your tribe. Just gym people.
Well, see, I'm not really a tribal person.
Yeah, you are. You just said it.
So I mentioned all these personality spectrum things, and we're talking about Steve Jobs and whatever earlier. One of the traits is sort of agreeableness. So people who are high in agreeableness are people who tend to say yes to a lot of stuff, who generally value harmony and being nice and whatever. So anyone who knows me quite well, Dean will laugh at this, I probably score fairly low on agreeableness. That's just my general nature. And disagreeable people don't tend to be collaborative. It's actually amazing that I can actually coexist with a co-host on a podcast. We get along pretty well. So I'm sort of on the disagreeable end of things. And that means that I don't like existing within a tribe. I tend to be more of an individualist. So I don't know if anybody's like, hey, I'm like, yeah, you might be a little more disagreeable.
Okay, let's give her the book one. We talked about books, okay. But like Andrew likes to ask, I won't ask it. I won't steal your thunder.
Oh no, that's okay. So you actually mentioned Barking Up the Wrong Tree, which awesome book. So we always try to get our guests to say, hey, is there a book that you really love that has made a difference in your life that you'd actually love to share with everybody? Say, hey, you got to read this book.
Oh, there are so many. Okay, so I think Sean Acor's The Happiness Advantage, where he talked about how being successful doesn't make you happy, but being happy makes you successful. So the happier you are, the better you're going to be able to deal with the shit that happens to you in life, and the better you're going to be able to think of solutions and, be successful. So success follows happiness, not the other way around. So the Happiness Advantage is one of the best ones. But as far as I think sometimes fitness professionals get caught up in a lot of self-development books, and that's fine. But once in a while, read some fiction. My favorite fiction book is called The Rook, and it is so bizarre, so weird that it'll make you a better writer and a better, better at stepping outside of the box and thinking about different things. So I think once in a while we need to focus on being creative, that creative aspect, because it'll make us better at everything else. So yeah, self-development books are awesome. And I do, I see the value in them, but at the same time, I can tell when everyone has read the same fucking book.
At the same time, because it just came out.
everyone is using those buzzwords, and it's like, oh, okay, are we going to talk about vulnerability again? Are we going to talk about authenticity? Because it's, and I understand that those are important words, and there's a time for all of that. But when everyone is saying the same exact stuff over and over again, it's like, okay, well, I can tell you all read the same book.
Yeah.
So I just think it's important to add variety and, read a little nonfiction, read a little fiction, read the Bible, read something else.
What's the Rook about?
What's that?
What's the Rook about?
It is so crazy.
Everyone's going to listen to it and be like, I want to know what it's about. You just say it's the craziest book ever. I'm not going to tell you.
Okay, sci-fi. So this girl wakes up and she has no memory of who she is or what she's about. Yeah. She wakes up in the park, I think. And she reads these series of notes that apparently her former self wrote for her. And she has to figure out what these notes mean and who she is. And her job is kind of crazy. I mean, it's the weirdest sci-fi book I've ever read, but it's hilarious at the same time.
Sounds like Memento.
So definitely read The Rook. It's gonna and then recommend it to everyone you know, because everyone who reads it is like, what the heck was that? That was so crazy, so fun to read. It's a fun read.
That sounds like the movie Memento. Have you ever seen that?
I have. That was a great movie.
Yeah.
That's the second time you read my mind on this, because it totally reminded me of Memento.
Yeah.
Yes.
So watch that movie too. So read The Rook and watch that movie. We make no money on that though. Damn it. Okay, we kind of touched on T Nation, but let's remind our listeners where they can find you online and on social media. So where can they consume all the stuff you're putting out?
I don't know if my stuff is worth consumption.
No, none of that.
So I'm on Instagram. It's just my name, Dani Shugart, DANISHUGART. And then I'm on tnation.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm pretty shy on Facebook. I don't really, I don't do a whole lot on Facebook. I don't know why. I think it's because, okay, this is going to be, I feel bad.
Good job, son.
Not that I love them. I love them to death, but it's just kind of weird because I don't want to I don't know. It's just weird talking fitness and knowing that your extended family is
cool. I think
I wanted to just throw out there, you're talking about, oh, no, I'm not sure my stuff's worth, no, we are very picky about who we pull on this podcast. And so what happened is recently, because you and I haven't met in person like I have with probably about 75-80% of our guests, but I saw that you commented on somebody else's, a mutual friend's Facebook. And anyway, so I'm like, Dani, cool. I've been reading her stuff for forever. She's great. So I sent you a friend request. And funny enough, often enough in our industry, we have enough mutual friends, people do that. I was in the middle of writing a message to, hey, I've been following you forever, blah, blah. And you accepted. We got chatting and we talked about the podcast and we made this happen really fast. But I'm trying to get great people on here who our listeners can actually get more into their ideas, their thoughts. Yeah. And so, no, I can't endorse.
I would say it's the opposite way around. So just this can go in there, is that when we see a lot of fitness professionals and we grow up reading all this shit, is we think some of these people are unaccessible. We are oh my God, this person's going to say yes to us. And we found that the more people we reach out to, the fitness industry actually isn't like that. It's not like if I were to go message Brad Pitt and his agent gets back to you and he's like, fuck you. Everyone seems to be pretty welcoming. So on our end, we're man, I don't know if we can get her. I don't know if she'll want to come on. So you were thinking the same thing that we were thinking. So it's kind of cool that we kind of get that reaction more often than not, I think. And that's awesome.
That is really cool. Yeah. Well, and if you guys ever want some people that I can recommend to you, I know a ton of people that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably something that, and actually when we get off air, I'll mention a couple of names I think would be really, really great to speak on here. But we're all, on one hand, we're always looking for, the best of the best. It's kind of funny. Every once in a while, I get sort of a message from someone in the industry who wants to come on the podcast. And sometimes it's actually kind of a perfect fit. John Goodman of the Personal Trainer Development Center is someone recommended that he come and do our podcast. I'm like, absolutely, John. I met him in person, and he's a really great guy. But then every once in a while, we occasionally, and I want to say this the right way, sometimes some of our trainer friends who are quite new to the industry or really haven't established any sort of a following, and they'll ask and they'll say, hey, I've got this, this great story. And a great story is amazing. But I think what they're sometimes looking for is sort of the validation to think that if they get on this podcast, which is done really, really well, but we're certainly not Rogan, as you were joking earlier, it's somehow going to mean that clients will be lining up or that, it validates them. And no, we can really help with all the experience I have. I'll have all kinds of conversations and I'll help people the best of my ability. And I can do a lot more for them that way to help their careers and get them going than it takes someone who's still quite new to this stuff. and splash them onto
You're-
the podcast.
You're too nice. I was just gonna say, like, literally at this point, we started this project as like a fuck it, let's just do it. We have like an hour a week where we get to like talk to people, and it becomes a project where we just want to talk to cool people. It's not that our friends aren't cool; it's just that like literally, it's just self fulfillment at this point. We just want to talk to all the cool people. So you fit the list of cool, you know?
Yeah.
I just try to be like nice and political. It's just like it's self-serving at this point. We just like talking to people.
Well, thank you so much, because I feel 100% uncool these days.
You're the coolest. Now you're even more cool now after meeting you, so that's good. You fit the bill. Like you exceeded expectations.
Aw.
Deep
I like
does this.
people's expectations nice and low.
Actually,
Deep does this all the time because, like, I'd say about 80% of our guests, before they come on the podcast, he probably doesn't actually know who they are.
I knew who Dani was. I read T-Nation. Don't tell them who I didn't know. I'm just like I was a teacher before this. Like I just powerlifted and lifted weights. Like I was so out of the industry, which is good. Like I like coming in with like a clean slate because then I could just ask questions.
Well, can I ask you what did you teach?
I initially I was in elementary. I was trained in phys ed, but I taught at my biggest position was I coordinated a program for it was cadets, but it was essentially EMS, police, and fire. It was like a career course, so it was like the sickest job ever. And then big contract issue.
Cool.
Yeah, I taught kindergarten at one point. Believe it. I taught kindergarten at one point. It was like
My
Arnold.
mom's a kindergarten teacher, or she was a kindergarten teacher for about 20 to 30 years.
It's the worst.
She loved it.
My mom was a teacher, recently retired as well. So I always have a lot of respect for teachers and what they do because I watch, my mom, who is just there's no person in the world who is more patient than my mother. So I do actually have more patience than people realize. I think I get that from my mom, but it balances out my dad, who's a little bit more.
Teaching's great. I just think that the fitness industry is a teaching job that people pay you for, and
Absolutely.
they want to do it. That's how I approached it. It's just I get to teach what I want as opposed to getting stuck teaching something I don't.
Yeah.
Well, I'll sort of clue it up by saying this. So, Dani, you're probably going to have some people who are listening to us for the first time ever, and that found us through you. So, to those people, I'll say, we've mentioned a few of our previous guests who are T-Nation writers. And if some of those interest you, go check that out. Our last week's episode with Brett Contreras was unbelievable. Stick around next week. We'll have Nick Tuminello, and there's plenty more. And for our listeners who've been listening to us for a long time, who may just be discovering Dani, again, go check out her stuff. Go check out goodgirlfitness.com online.
No, that out. It's
What?
old. Don't check that out.
It's really, really good. So
Thank
stop.
you.
And of course your social media. And check out what she's got to say too, because there's a lot of really great work there. One of the things I always like to say about T-Nation, I don't know, I've said this on the air before, because we exist in an industry where sometimes some of the professionals, they can actually be a little critical of T-Nation. They feel like the memes can be a little offensive, like we alluded to earlier, or they feel like that the T-Nation doesn't cater to a certain audience, and maybe it's geared a bit more to the big lifter, the pros, or whatever. And here's my thoughts on this. I've been reading T-Nation. I learned more from T-Nation as a single resource than anything else in my training career. There is great information. You know what? There is also, like anywhere else, there's some stuff that I don't agree with and that may not necessarily be as strongly scientifically backed. So I think reading T-Nation is an amazing exercise in being able to filter between, really, really, really great content and then maybe some of the stuff that just doesn't apply to you. So I found it a really great exercise, and it's where a lot of my
That's where I started out as like a young kid. With the internet there's no YouTube.
Follow the people who have been longtime prolific T-Nation writers, and I've had the good fortune of actually meeting a lot of them in person and becoming friends with them, and we've had them on the podcast. So there's a lot of good there. And quite frankly, if you're offended by a T-Nation meme,
You can fuck off. Sorry.
Can I express that? Because you made such a good point, but I totally want to jump in there.
Absolutely.
Because it's a great point. Because, listen, there are so many contributors who write for T-Nation that, like, even the editors don't agree with everything. Like, I certainly don't. And sometimes, it's just, it would be impossible for you to agree with every single perspective that's on tnation.com. So I don't even agree with myself from 3 or 4 years ago. Like my knowledge as it grows, I realize, oh shit, I was wrong about that. And what the heck was I saying? Because I don't even agree with that anymore. But you have to be able to think, okay, well, that person who has that opinion, has that perspective, that's just a snapshot of what they think on that topic at that time. That's not their lifetime manifesto. So don't form opinions of people just because of one article or one perspective that they wrote that one time, because it may not even be accurate today, or it doesn't reveal the full depth of their character or who they are in life. It's not everything they believe in. It's just one thing that they think, and it may not be what they think forever. You know what I mean? And as far as the memes, like, oh my gosh, I know it's memes are just there to get a reaction and to get people to interact with each other, and whether or not that's friendly or just it creates discussion. And so that's kind of how I see them. If you don't have to agree with every single meme out there, I certainly don't, but it's interesting to read the discussions underneath them, right? I mean, everyone has their own opinion of everything. And so I think it's kind of fun when people get upset over memes, because it's like, you did exactly what we wanted you to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I read this recently, and this makes so much sense. It was about how if you wrote something or post something on social media that was maybe a little controversial or opinionated, it used to be great for creating discussion. It used to be a great way to get attention and create a talking point and get people going. And now it feels like everything just offends people, and everything needs to be filtered through political correctness. And then there's just this crying fit if you are exposed to something you don't agree with. And I find that there's some people who just want it all taken down. They don't want to be exposed to things they disagree with. Yeah. That's not everybody, but there's more than enough of it online. And it's sort of sad to see that society has changed that way, and that prevailing attitude now is just, that offends me, I don't want to see that, that shouldn't be allowed. That's kind of scary when I think about it. And sometimes the reaction to some of those memes takes that form. And I'm sorry, but if you're the type of person who can't handle something that you don't agree with, then life's going to get really, really difficult for you, and you're going to have a lot of bad experiences. So I think the quicker you can learn to handle stuff that doesn't jive with you and go about your life and not be stressed the fuck out about it, I think you're going to have a better existence.
Yeah. Well, and people need to shrug and say, oh, well, we don't agree with each other on that point. Yeah. The next thing that I need to do today, people just need to have lives.
Well, we've gone on and on and on. This has actually been an unbelievable podcast. Yeah. I really hope people stuck around to the end, because actually some of my best stuff was in the last 15 minutes. Dani, thank you so much. This is just an honor and a treat to have you on here. And stick around after we sign off, and we'll have a little more of a chat. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll chat with you next week.
Shut up and sit down.